Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here today. There's been so many wonderful speakers this morning, this afternoon. It has been great to hear everybody and all the wisdom, and I hope all the caregivers out there are taking notes and getting some great information for themselves. And today I'm going to be talking about balancing your life well caregiving. As Cheryl mentioned, I cared for my mother in 2013. Everything was going great in my life, career woman, top of my game. And I got a call that said my mother had had a stroke. I went in to that hospital and I didn't know if I was going to walk out of that hospital with a mother or having to make plans for a funeral for her. And when I got to wheel her out of that hospital 3 months later, as many of us are, I was thrown into caregiving. So there was a lot of things that came with it. I immediately, with no training, became a PT, an OT, a med manager, a case manager, all of these things, an EMT, a CNA, without any training. And I was trying to do that on top of my life while working full time. Well, many of us go through that, the stress of that. We are thrown into it. We don't know how to change our lives to fit it in. We just try to do two lives at once. Well, me trying to do the two lives at once, caring for my mother and also trying to still hold on to my old life, what happened for me was 3 years into caregiving, I went to my last doctor's appointment and they said, "Hey, Christina, you have maybe 6 months to live. Your body is literally shutting down from the stress of caregiving." I was sleeping maybe 5 to 10 hours a week. And as we know, when I wasn't sleeping, I was stressing constantly, as we do as caregivers. And so I had to figure out how to practice that that word that we don't like as caregivers, self-care, right? But I had to redefine it because before I thought as a caregiver, I could not fit that into my schedule because here I was working, I was trying to take care of my mom. And my idea of self-care was going to the beach. It was going on vacations. It was going to the spa, mani-pedis. I did not have the time or the money to do that. Even if somebody had given me a gift certificate for a massage and paid for caregivers to be with my mom, it would have taken me, I don't know, 40 minutes to relax and only had 5 minutes left on that table to get a massage, right? So what I had to do was take a minute to redefine my normal. My normal before was I had nights off, I had weekends off, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 is when I worked, and then I could fit my self-care in at night and on the weekends. So I had to look at what my life was like now. By this time, I had left my career because the demands of caregiving, and I was working 5 part-time jobs to pay for my mother's care. So I had to look at what my schedule was like now. My schedule was like now. My mother didn't wake up until 10. I had some morning caregivers that went in for her. I had some caregivers at night, in the afternoons, and also at night. I took care of her, and I fit in my part-time jobs and contracts between that. So I had 5 minutes here, I had 5 minutes there, and I had to figure out how to fit in that self-care. Now, when they told me I had 6 months to live, I had to make a choice. And frankly, as caregivers, we're overwhelmed. We are overwhelmed. We don't know how to do what we're doing. We have to think on the fly. And many days we feel very defeated. So frankly, when that happened, I was like, well, it's just God figuring out that I've done enough and it's my turn to go, right? But I am my mother's daughter and I wasn't going to give up. And so I had to figure out how to save my life and take care of my mother. And it was mentioned a little bit before how caregiving can affect family caregivers. And the stats on family caregivers, the mortality rates for family caregivers is 30% of family caregivers pass before the person they're caring for. 35% of family caregivers pass within 5 years of the person they're caring for. And for caregivers that are over the age of 70, 65% of them pass before the person they're caring for because of the stress and because we're not going to the doctors, we're not taking care of ourselves, we're not doing the things we used to do. So I needed to figure out how to find some balance in my life quickly, or I was not going to make it. And there would be nobody to take care of my mother. So what I did was I found 30 seconds, I found 2 minutes, I found 5 minutes. And my first act of self-care was literally taking a blood pressure pill and texting a friend and saying that I took that. For 30 days, I made that a habit. That was the only thing I committed to, was one 30-second act for 30 days. And once that happened, I would start committing to walking down the hallway and reaching my arms up, just something to get some kind of stretches in. That was not taking that long at all. And then when I started going, when I went to the doctor's office or when I went to the hospital with my mom, I started carrying a bag. I would bring a bag to the hospital for my mom's stuff, her special blanket, something to go home from the hospital, the med list, all those things for my mom. But I started packing me a carry on the go bag, right? That had all my things in it, a water bottle, phone chargers, a pillow, because I was going to be staying in that hospital too, right? And so I started practicing little acts of self-care, like bringing that water bottle. So when mom was okay in the hospital, I could go get some water and I could take a deep breath by that water fountain. I could do a lap around the nurse's station. All of these tiny things that I did. And then the 30-second acts became a 5-minute act and a 15-minute act. Now, they weren't long vacations anymore, and they still weren't mani-pedis, but they were things I could fit into my life that could balance my life. And what happened was I was able to provide better care for my mother because I was less stressed. My cortisone levels were coming down a little bit. I got a lot healthier. I lived past the 6 months, right? And it's important for us, whether we are thrown into caregiving or whether we've changed our job or whether we've gotten married or we have children, all of these things, it's important to stop for a minute because we feel overwhelmed with that change. Stop for a minute and reevaluate, like, what is my normal now? When do I have gaps of 5, 10, 15 minutes? Because what will eventually happen if you do that is they will add up to a half an hour and an hour. And then we'll learn how to balance our life. And in balancing our life, we're going to find more joy. In caregiving, it's really, really, really important to do that because as a stressed out caregiver, right before they told me I had 6 months to live, caring for my mother was so stressful and I wasn't taking care of myself that my time with my mother was not always used in the best way. My emotional state and my mental state, the anxiety levels when I would go in to see my mother and have to take care of her were not good. And this happens a lot for many caregivers. And so once I started putting in those small acts of self-care and taking care of myself, and I just want to say, those small acts of self-care can be crying in your car, right? Allowing time to do that, taking a 15-minute nap, right? Taking time to, brush your hair for a minute and just relax and take a deep breath. Like those type of things can be self-care. So when I started doing those things and the self-care started adding up, I would be able to go in and see my mom and care for her. And she could tell me for the 20th time, I'm not taking my medication. I'm not taking my pills. And, those things are very frustrating for us as caregivers, but I would be able to be like, okay, mom, well, let's try this. And I would be able to think clearly. It also made it so I was able to advocate better for my mother when I was in the hospital. I was able to advocate better for myself when I was walking through challenges and advocate better for her when I was on the phone with, the Medicare and other places like that. And if you've ever had to call an insurance company as a caregiver, that will raise your blood pressure right there, right? So balancing our life while caregiving can be very simple, but it doesn't feel simple at first, right? And in the long run, what I found, all those times that I thought, I don't have any time for self-care. I don't have any time. If you only knew my life, if you only knew my life, I'm taking care of my mom. There's constantly an emergency. I'm either going into an emergency, coming out of an emergency, or recovering from an emergency. There's no time. Well, when I took a minute to redefine my normal and redefine what self-care was for me and put it in the chunks of 5, 10, sometimes 5, 10 seconds, but 5, 10, 15 minutes, what happened for me is those added up and I was able to change my life. I was able to change my life in a way that it created meaning for me and it created a better relationship with me and my mother. So I challenge all the caregivers out there today, if you do anything for yourself today, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling like it's all just too much, I want you to take a minute and redefine what your normal is. Look at what your schedule is now, what you have available now. And if it is only 5 or 10 minutes, think about what you can do in that 5 or 10 minutes, whether it's just take 3 breaths or take a walk around the nurse's station, something simple for yourself, because you are worth it. You are providing care for a loved one. It is okay for you to have a good life also. It is okay for you to take care of yourself also. And with that, I want to thank you. If you want to find out more tips on balancing your life while caregiving or life after caregiving, feel free to visit my website at ChristinaKeys.com. Would love to hear from you, and so grateful that you all came to the symposium today.